After years of being overlooked and financially exploited by my parents, I reached my breaking point during a medical crisis. Choosing my children and healing over toxic loyalty, I cut ties, found community, and rebuilt my life. I emerged stronger, no longer seeking approval, but fiercely protecting the peace I created. Claire Wilson is my name. I'm 34 years old, and I've always been the odd man out in my own family. The golden child, my younger sister Rachel, was untouchable in the eyes of our parents. While I had emergency surgery 6 months ago for problems connected to my husband's death, I was unable to even convince them to watch their only grandchildren. My parents only cared about their concert tickets and spending Christmas Eve with Rachel, even though the doctors had discovered internal bleeding that needed to be treated right away. After trying everything else, I ultimately turned to them for assistance, and my dad's remark pierced my heart more deeply than any medical instrument could. "You're becoming a real nuisance and burden, Claire. We're retired now. We deserve to enjoy our lives without your constant problems." Since my parents retired early 3 years ago, I have been providing for them financially. I always provided them $2,500 a month to help with their expenditures and mortgage. I continued to send the money, even after Daniel passed away, either out of obligation, love, or a desperate conviction that family should help one another. How stupid I was. Heather gave me a gentle shoulder squeeze as my tears flowed silently into the hospital blanket. "My friend Sophie is a professional nanny who specializes in childhood trauma. Let me call her for you," she said. Her generosity stood in sharp contrast to my parents' lack of concern. The twins were too small to comprehend the situation. Their father had previously died in an automobile accident. Now, if the procedure didn't work well, they might lose me too. I was afraid of the idea, but not as much as I was of leaving them with somebody who thought of them as a burden. I made my choice at that same instant, with disappointment shattering my heart and sorrow burning through my body. I said, "Yes, please. Call her," to Heather. I started severing the toxic connections with the individuals who had reared me but had never shown me true love after saying those words. A flood of memories swept over me as I hung up. There had been several times during my youth when I was ignored while Rachel got all the attention. Rachel was cast in a local commercial that same weekend, so my parents hardly noticed that I graduated with honors from college. They grumbled that the wedding location was too distant from their house when I married Daniel. They only came once, even after the twins were delivered, since they said the babies were too fussy for them. Through it all, Daniel had been my pillar of support. Having spent years apart from his own father, he was aware of the anguish of family disappointment. When he said, "We'll build our own family, one that knows how to love," and we succeeded in building a cozy, accepting, and humorous home. However, a drunk driver took him away 6 months ago, leaving me to raise our kids by myself while dealing with loss and sadness. I kept helping my parents in spite of my loss. When they said they were having trouble keeping up with inflation, I even raised the monthly amount. I aspired to surpass them. I wanted to demonstrate that family members should always support one another. The irony was heartbreaking. To take care of my kids, they couldn't miss a single concert while I was bleeding internally and might be dying. When Heather got back, she told them that her friend Sophie will be there in an hour. "She's amazing with kids," Heather told me. She used to work with trauma victims at the Children's Hospital before becoming a private nanny. "How much will this cost?" I inquired, my voice beginning to waver with anxiety. Daniel's insurance coverage had restrictions, so the medical expenditures were already mounting. The gentle words, "Don't worry about that now," came from Heather. "Let's focus on getting you ready for surgery." However, I was concerned. I considered the $2,500. Next week, I was supposed to give my parents money that could now be used to help cover childcare. Something ignited inside me at the concept, a self-preservation fire that had been smothered years before. Sophie met Heather's expectations in every way. She was professional, polite, and connected with the twins right away. I made a choice while the hospital staff readied me for surgery. I said to Heather, "Could you bring me my phone one more time?" I sent 2 messages, hands shaking. First, I canceled any upcoming automatic transfers to my parents' account with my bank. To my parents, the second was, "I will no longer be providing financial support. My children and I deserve better than being your afterthoughts. Don't contact me again." Despite the pain and terror, I experienced something unexpected as they wheeled me toward the operation room. Freedom. Although the surgery went well, I was not as strong as I had hoped. I was thankful for Sophie while I drifted in and out of consciousness for 5 days in the ICU. She had gone above and beyond by taking the twins to my apartment at night and remaining with them in my hospital room throughout the day. My phone was blazing with notifications during one of my more lucid periods. There were 27 missed calls and a ton of text messages from Rachel and my parents. The majority of the communications had a recurring pattern: bewilderment, rage, and then frantic requests regarding their mortgage payment. They never inquired about the outcome of my procedure. They never inquired about the twins' well-being. My father's last message was especially instructive. "You can't just cut us off like this. We've planned a cruise next month, and the tickets are non-refundable." The communications from my sister were different. She appeared to be truly perplexed. "Mom and Dad just told me you were having some minor procedure. What's going on? Why are they freaking out about money?" I realized that they had downplayed the gravity of my predicament and misled Rachel in order to defend their concert selection over their own grandchildren. Still feeling drowsy from the drug, I sent her the whole tale, since I wanted to be honest with her. She responded right away. "Oh my God, Claire, I had no idea it was an emergency surgery. They told me you were just being dramatic about a routine checkup. I would have watched the twins if I'd known. I'm so sorry." I trusted her. Rachel wasn't mean. She had simply been brought up in a household that prioritized her wants. She might be able to perceive our parents more clearly as a result of this realization. I had made a number of choices by the time I was released. In order to assist with the twins while I recovered, I first employed Sophie on a part-time basis. Second, I hired a lawyer to write a will, naming a close friend, definitely not my parents, as the twins' guardian in the event that I passed away. Third, while I evaluated Rachel's sincerity, I banned my parents' numbers and only permitted her limited communication. My choice had substantial financial ramifications. I had been paying my parents $2,500 a month, which was over 1/3 of my earnings as a graphic designer. I could actually pay for quality childcare without that burden, and perhaps even begin replenishing the emergency fund that had been exhausted following Daniel's passing. I experienced a wide range of complicated feelings that night as I slept in my own bed while the twins slept in their room across the hall. There was remorse, the deep-rooted sense that I was guilty in some way for prioritizing my children and myself. There was anxiety about taking care of 2 kids while recovering. However, a newfound sense of self-respect was also emerging. Rachel texted me, and my phone rang. "I just had a huge fight with Mom and Dad about how they treated you. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Can we talk tomorrow?" Perhaps I wasn't so alone after all. I was gradually becoming stronger 2 weeks after my surgery. I was getting better every day, but the incision site still hurt when I moved too fast. Sophie had been a blessing, coming to watch the twins every morning while I did my work from home. I was thankful that I could work remotely and still be near my kids, and my graphic design clients had been surprisingly patient about my limited availability. Rachel had been twice to spend time with the twins and deliver nutritious food. After a series of cautious chats, she finally shared her personal experiences with our parents. "They always made it seem like you were choosing to distance yourself from the family," she said one evening while we were watching the twins play. "I never realized they were pushing you away." After years of our parents' manipulation, I was starting to see a different side of my sister. I valued her efforts, even though I wasn't yet ready to fully trust her. Then, I was almost expecting a knock at the door. I could see my parents standing in the hallway through the peephole, while my father stood with his arms crossed and his face engraved with that familiar expression of restless patience. My mother gripped her beautiful pocketbook uncomfortably. With my heart racing, I opened the door just enough to talk through the opening. I said, "What do you want?" in a more steady voice than I had anticipated. My mother started out by saying, "Claire, darling, we've been so worried," and her sweet voice instantly made me defensive. "You haven't been answering our calls, and we needed to make sure you and the twins were all right." "We're fine," was my blunt response. "Now, if that's all—" "It's not all," my father said, squeezing the door a little. "We need to discuss this ridiculous financial situation. The bank called about our mortgage payment, and we had to dip into our cruise savings to cover it." It was breathtakingly audacious. No inquiries regarding my recuperation. They don't care for their grandchildren. Only financial demands. "I told you I'm cutting financial ties," I replied. "I meant it. But sweetie," my mother begged, raising her voice a pitch, "we've become dependent on that money. Your father and I changed our way of life because of your promise to support us." "My commitment?" I repeated incredulously. "I've been sending money out of guilt and obligation while you couldn't even watch your grandchildren during my emergency surgery." My dad's expression hardened. "That's not fair, Claire. We had plans." Anger rising, I retorted, "Plans more important than my children's safety, more important than my life. Do you know what the doctor said? There was a chance I might not survive that surgery. Did you even bother to ask?" Their silence was a sufficient response. "We made one mistake," my mom said in a dramatic whisper. "Are you really going to punish us like this?" "This isn't punishment, Mom. This is the consequence," I responded, feeling an odd sense of peace. "I've spent my entire life seeking your approval and support, and in my moment of greatest need, you chose Elton John tickets over helping me." My father interrupted, his tone changing to one of authority, as though that in and of itself gave him the right to my submission. "We're your parents," he said. I retorted, "And I'm a parent too. I would never treat Leo and Lily the way you've treated me. Never." Lily, holding her plush giraffe, came into view at that very moment. My mother changed her strategy right away. She bent down and cooed, "There's my precious grandbaby." Grandma brought presents. Unaccustomed to these relative strangers, Lily retreated and gave me a doubtful glance. Quietly, I murmured, "I think you should leave. When I'm ready to talk, if I'm ever ready, I'll reach out." "But the money," began my father. After saying, "is no longer your concern," I softly shut the door. My folks came back with reinforcements the following morning. The following morning, my mother's sister, Linda, who had always positioned herself as the family peacemaker, arrived. Linda begged, "Claire, honey, let's be reasonable," from outside my door, which I had left unopened. "Your parents are struggling without your help." I answered through the door. Before I began assisting them, they managed their finances for decades. They chose early retirement knowing their savings weren't adequate. The voice of my mother interrupted. "We made those decisions because you promised to help us. We've had to cancel our cruise, and now we might lose the house." Now that I had detached myself from the haze of guilt they had enveloped me with for years, their attempts at manipulation were so obvious. I had pledged lifetime support at what point? After their retirement, I had promised to assist briefly, but for some reason, it had turned into a long-term agreement. I walked away from the door, ignoring their persistent banging and begging, after saying firmly, "Mom, Dad, I'm recovering from major surgery and caring for 2 toddlers. This conversation is over." My father sent out a group email to the entire extended family later that day. He said that after they had sacrificed everything for me, I had deserted them when they needed me most. Their refusal to assist with the twins during my emergency surgery was neatly left out of the correspondence. Rather, it portrayed me as an unappreciative daughter who abruptly and unjustifiably cut them off. The outcry was something they hadn't expected. Living close to my parents, my cousin Ben responded to the group. "Uncle Robert, didn't you just buy a new boat last month?" And Aunt Monica, "Wasn't that a new diamond tennis bracelet you were showing off at Thanksgiving?" Other relatives added their voices. I received a lot of private messages asking for the whole story. When Linda found out, she even gave me a call. She said, "I didn't know about your surgery. They told me you were just being dramatic about some routine procedure and using it to punish them financially." Rachel Mentime had completely sided with me. She assisted me in creating a single truthful response to the family email thread after she personally observed our parents' actions. "I recently underwent emergency surgery with a significant risk of complications. My parents refused to watch my children during this time because they had concert tickets. I am now focusing on my recovery and caring for my twins without additional stress." The outpouring of support was tremendous. Home-cooked meals were delivered by Cousin Ben's spouse. I was offered a free part-time babysitting job by a second cousin I hardly knew. As she helped me recover, Rachel began spending weekends at my apartment and got to know her niece and nephew. Most unexpectedly, the hospital's Heather put me in touch with a young widowed parent support group. I was able to attend from home for their first meeting, which was conducted via Zoom, and for the first time since Daniel's passing, I felt like I was being understood by those who had been in my shoes. Meanwhile, my parents' financial condition rapidly worsened. In fact, they had been living above their means and relied on my monthly payments to support their lavish spending and travel. Rachel learned that, on the assumption that I would keep paying down their principal mortgage eternally, they had taken out a second mortgage on their home a year prior in order to purchase the yacht. After assisting them in reviewing their finances at their request, Rachel exclaimed in horror, "They've been lying to everyone. They're not destitute, they're just overspent. They'd be fine if they sold the boat and vacation timeshare." They kept sending me increasingly urgent SMS and voicemails, but every day they lost control of me. I was creating a new thing out of the ashes of their treachery, a real support system built on reciprocal concern. I was beginning to make decisions out of self-respect rather than duty. A significant and unanticipated turn of events happened a month following my surgery. My parents were served with a foreclosure notice. Rachel called to let me know, her voice a mixture of frustration and worry. She clarified, "They're in total panic mode. The bank is giving them 60 days to catch up on payments, or they'll lose the house." As Leo slept close by, I bounced Lily on my knee and asked, "What about their retirement funds?" "Mostly depleted," lamented Rachel. "They spent a chunk on that boat, then invested the rest in some scheme Dad's golf buddy recommended. They lost almost everything." "I'm not saying you should help them, Claire," she said. "I just thought you should know." Both of my parents texted me later that night in a desperate attempt to raise money, dropping any pretense of concern for my welfare. The message from my mother was very eye-opening. "We never thought you'd actually cut us off. We assumed you were just angry and would start sending money again after a week or two." I was enraged by their presumption that my boundaries weren't genuine. Years of prioritizing their needs over mine. All those times when they accepted being mistreated, I had never been respected by them. In the meantime, unforeseen changes were occurring in my own life. By putting me in touch with other parents going through comparable struggles, the support group had turned into a lifeline. They introduced me to Monica, a real estate agent with a 3-year-old boy whose husband had passed away from cancer 2 years prior. She assisted me in thinking about possibilities I had not previously considered, such as selling my too-small apartment and utilizing the proceeds to relocate to a more reasonably priced area with greater access to childcare. Inspired by the memorial website I made for Daniel, I also launched a little side company creating memorial websites. Word was getting out that some people in my support group had commissioned web pages. I had a sense of purpose that went beyond survival for the first time since I became a widow. My parents' unexpected return to my flat, this time accompanied with a comprehensive spreadsheet of their debts, further highlighted the gap between my development and their downfall. My dad added, "We need $144,000 to catch up on the mortgage and avoid foreclosure," in his typically commanding voice that was now laced with despair. I invited them in, not because I had to, but because I wanted to hear what they had to say now that they were actually being held accountable. "What about selling the boat?" I said, motioning for them to take a seat at my tiny dining table. "We'd take a loss," refused my father. "And the timeshare." My mother hastily added, "We've tried, but the market is terrible. Besides, those are our retirement luxuries." I nearly chuckled at the ridiculousness. "Luxuries you can't afford." "We could afford them with your help," my father shot back, his voice becoming more stern. "It's the least you could do after everything we've done for you." Silently, I posed the inquiry, "What exactly have you done for me?" As if it were a task. With Lily chatting joyfully and Leo clutching his beloved vehicle, the twins decided to enter the room at that precise moment. My parents' faces immediately softened. My mother crooned, "There are our precious babies," and reached for Lily, who immediately fled under my legs. "They don't know you," I said plainly. "You've seen them, 3 times in their lives. You chose not to be involved." My father objected, saying, "That's not fair. We're busy people. Too busy for your only grandchildren. Too busy to help your daughter through emergency surgery. But not too busy to ask for money," I thought. "I think that says everything about your priorities." I could no longer determine if my mother's face crumpled out of genuine sadness or deliberate manipulation. "We'll lose everything without your help," she muttered. "I lost my husband," I answered steadily. "My children lost their father. We survived. You'll survive too." My parents had to deal with the inevitable 3 months following my surgery. In order to keep their home from going into foreclosure, they had to sell it. Although I kept my distance, Rachel kept me informed about their circumstances. They had been able to downsize from their 4,000 square foot lakefront property to a small condo. They eventually unloaded the timeshare for a small portion of what they had purchased, after my father reluctantly sold his yacht at a loss. During one of her weekly visits, Rachel told me, "They're actually blaming you for their financial problems in front of everyone." It's bizarre to watch. They tell anyone who will listen that you abandoned them after promising lifelong support. "Let them talk," I said, surprised that I didn't find it bothersome. "The truth speaks for itself." And it did. After hearing the whole story, my extended family had mostly come together in support of me. After learning of their refusal to assist during my surgery, even my father's sister, who had always sided with him in family conflicts, contacted to offer her support. My personal circumstances meantime had significantly improved. I had found and bought a modest 3-bedroom home in a family-friendly neighborhood with the assistance of Monica from the support group. For the first time in their lives, the twins had a backyard to play in, and the mortgage payments were actually lower than the rent from my apartment. I was able to cut back on my graphic design clients and concentrate on work that felt purposeful because my side gig of creating memorial websites had expanded sufficiently. I had changed my schedule to spend more time with Leo and Lily, but Sophie continued to assist with childcare 3 days a week. Above all, I had discovered a community. When we moved in, our neighbors brought casseroles. They arranged play dates through the support group. Rachel was no longer a rival for our parents' love, but a true sister. Sometimes, even hospital employee Heather would drop by with her kids. Despite the fact that I had lost my spouse and severed my relationship with my parents, I felt less alone than ever. I got a letter, a real handwritten letter, 6 months after my surgery from. They had been substituted for plain, functional clothes. I wasn't yet prepared for a family gathering, so the twins spent the afternoon with Rachel. Before my father did something out of the ordinary, we sat in uneasy quiet. He sobbed. "I've been a terrible father," he said in a broken voice, "and an even worse grandfather. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I see it now. How selfish we've been." My mother gestured toward my hand across the table, but she didn't actually touch it. "We've been in family therapy for months," she said. "It was Rachel's idea, and we resisted at first, but it's been transformative. I took my time forgiving them. I didn't make commitments I couldn't keep. Rather, I posted images of the twins. I shared our new existence with them. Without interjecting, avoiding, or making it about themselves, they listened. For the first time, maybe, my father said softly, 'Would it be possible someday to know our grandchildren?' As we were leaving, I gave this a lot of thought before responding. That depends on your actions, not your words. If you're genuinely committed to change, we can start with short, supervised visits. But understand this, my children will only have relationships with people who respect their mother." As I left that meeting, I was free of the smoldering animosity and crushing weight of duty that had characterized our relationship for so long. Rather, I experienced something fresh, the composed confidence of a woman who understood her value, a woman who had set limits and would not back down from them. It was unclear if my parents could actually change. However, I had already changed, from a daughter in need of acceptance to a mother who was passionate in her defense and explicit in her demands. I chose calm, set boundaries, and built a life I enjoy, which is how I transformed sadness into healing, not by shouting bouts or making big gestures. Living well, becoming stronger, and leaving with your head held high are sometimes the best forms of retaliation. I hope you know that you don't have to live with resentment or treachery for the rest of your life. You can create your own finale, put it down, and move onward. Have you ever left someone who didn't think you were valuable? I would love to hear your tale, so please share it here.